and we are moving into our second conversation for today as we learn more about the Belize Hospice and Palliative Care Foundation. We have with us on set Dr. Ramon Yacab, who is the Vice President of the Foundation. We have Marilyn Dawson Aspinall, who is the President. And on the end, we have Chaplain Frederico Gianelli. Good morning, and welcome.
Good morning.
So this conversation, I think, has to start with just what the work that the Palliative Care Foundation does. It's not something that many of us want to think about or like to think about, but a very necessary role that you play. So let's start there.
Okay, the foundation actually came into being, well, official NGO status was achieved in like 2009, but we were working long before that. Yeah. And it provides home-based care for persons with terminal illness. Mm-hmm. It's like if you're very ill, you're going to the death and dying stage, okay, and you need help at home. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have caregivers at home. Persons may have caregivers within the home, but even these persons need help, mm-hmm. and they need breaks, mm-hmm. okay? And then you have persons who are very ill and don't have family support. They don't have the community support. So we go into their homes and we help them. It may be things like giving medications, like Dr. Yacab would help, and order medications for pain management, symptom management. Okay, it can be just general nursing care. It can be just something like socialization, reading to them, helping them to clean their homes. It's like I've met patients like these little ladies, they are going crazy because they're unable mm-hmm. to do any of the things they used to do. They're unable to get up and be active. Mm-hmm. So you go into their homes and help them. So we're volunteer-based, meaning that most any person can join and we can train you mm-hmm. to provide this type of care. And we also can help you how to deal with death and dying. It's not something we think about every day, like you say. It's not something we talk about. So it's not like you will just jump right in with 2 feet and say, yes, I'm here. We would have to help you how to deal with these things.
Talking about death is taboo. Just about everywhere in the world. But different people have different experiences. As a member of a church, as two medical professionals, mm-hmm. you come in contact more with people who are dying than your average person. Is that part of what kind of allows you to feel more comfortable in getting involved in the organization, in the foundation?
So I would say yes, and also palliative care is about a transdisciplinary team. That means the founder of palliative care in the world was Cicely Saunders. She used to say, if you provide palliative care without spirituality, it's not palliative care. So the holistic approach of the person is met the person where the person is. For example, many of the patients I've been visiting these past 2 weeks since I came from California, few of them, the first need is not hold hands and pray, is not a spiritual conversation, but it is a food. Something to eat, because they go days without eat. Some is physical pain, and before we start to talk, we have to manage to then come to the hospital. Some of the family come to the hospital and get the medicines for their physical pain. So it is a training, it's a training in different levels to be able to provide this holistic care. As we were talking a few days ago, for those patients who are seriously ill, those patients who are at the end of their lives, they need science, they need pain management, they need physical symptom management. But what they need the most is love. Mm-hmm. Somebody who is able to love them, somebody who is able to be present, somebody who is able to bring a smile, somebody who is able to bring a glass of water, somebody who is able to be there with them in that journey. And that brings quality of life, and that brings peace, and that brings compassion, and that brings closeness. So palliative care tries to recover the human side of a medical field, that may got lost as science develop and develop. And it goes together. As the focus is the patient and the patient in the needs she or he has.
Yeah. What got you both involved?
Well, me, it's a personal experience. I mean, during med school, I was in contact with many oncologic patients. I came back to Belize and I saw the need, and I went and continued with that. Now, it is true most of our patients are patients, and we have to define here palliative care and what is hospice care. And I think that's important. Palliative care implies helping the patient attain quality of life, being the patient is the center, and we're just helping. We're helping. Meanwhile, hospice is already taking the theme about end of life. We're preparing the patient. And we know that there are diseases that are not curable. And I mean, cancer does take a big bulk out of all of this, but there are other diseases too. Now, what can we offer the patients who we cannot offer a cure? That's the main, that's one of the topics that we have to deal with too. And it's actually, we're not postponing death. We're not hastening death. We're preparing the patient for when the time is right, for the patient to go as comfortable and die with dignity.
In terms of the popularity, perhaps for want of a better word here, of this kind of care among Belizeans, because to some it may be a completely new concept that there is an organization that is active, that is there to help persons transition, if I may. In terms of its overall popularity or its familiarity, how do you guys go about, finding these persons who are in need of this particular care?
Well, we take referrals from specialists throughout the country. Currently, we're more Belize city-based, although we have made strides to raise up groups in other areas. And you spoke earlier about Dr. Thompson, who is our founder, and she has stepped away from Belize City for a bit so that she can raise up groups in other parts of the country because there is need throughout Belize. We get other persons by forums such as this, okay? We can reach out to the Belizean public and let them know that there's help available if you're going through this. At the same time, you can be the assistance that someone needs. It's by word of mouth. I remember when we started in the hospital, someone would just come to you. There were no proper referrals per se. It's like a corridor conversation. This person was diagnosed with XYZ and they're at home and there's no one to care for them. They're at home, no one to take their medication to them, and we would go visit.
How do you do it?
Yeah.
Just as a human being who faces other people. I mean, death is a part of life.
Sure.
It's not the part of life we like to think about.
Yes.
And anyone losing a loved one is a very difficult situation. And I'm sure you go, you visit, you build a relationship. There is a connection, and you're building a connection with an end in sight. How do you do that?
So, as I mentioned before, we met people where they are. Sometimes in a church work, in a university work, in a college work, you have to bring people to your agenda.
Yeah.
Here, the agenda is patient's agenda.
Okay.
So as we enter to a sacred space. It's other person's lives, it's other person's home, it's other person's family. And with very, very respectful, very gentle, we try to identify. We have what is what we call in the professional field spiritual pain. What is the need? What is taking that inner peace of that person and making this illness process, making this process of gradually decline even worse? And sometimes our experience from childhood, sometimes our experience from life. To your question, how we do, I think is for each of us probably is a very unique. In my case, I would say it comes from my faith. with my relation with God, with my relation with a divine, but also comes from the need to help. And I would say, you mentioned something a few times is very important. I think, at least for my case and students I had in training for palliative care, for those who had faced their own mortality early on through the mortality of a loved one, through a mortality of a parent or a grandparent or a close friend, the fear of death do not dominate. And when they are in front of death, facing the death of someone, they do not paralyze. But the other side, that compassionate side, that side of, okay, it's not about me, it's about the person in front of me. And from there, try to walk with and support that person.
Anything you want to share?
It's about giving back. It's about being grateful that you're on this side of the bed for now, and realizing that you can be on the other side, or a family member can be on the other side at any point in time.
Yeah.
And from my part, it's also the past experiences that I've had, especially with cancer patients, seeing that there's a need for them. I mean, even though, as you correctly mentioned, we cannot avoid that.
Yeah.
We have to go with dignity, and that's where I think we have to be empathic, especially with the patients. Not only that, but it's a basic right, a basic human right for every person to leave this life with dignity.
I recall talking to Dr. Thompson years ago, and I think when she recognized the need, it was just because she knew very well that people were dying without pain medication, without someone next to them, and really not having that dignity. My question is now, 8 years later, since you've officially become an NGO, you said 2010? 2009, almost 9 years, yeah. What's the need? Is there a growing need of people that you're working with?
The need is there. I mean, if we talk about the organization has done strides in terms of offering this need. However, the patient demand increases with each day. We know that palliative care, it's not only talking about cancer, it's talking about other conditions. And we know that these conditions take the bulk of mortality when it comes to our population. I mean, roughly around 60% of deaths in Belize are attributed to non-communicable diseases. That means CHF, that means chronic kidney disease, that means cancer. So inclusive, what's being done is integrate palliative care at the from early set as the patient's being diagnosed, so that we know that it's going to be through all the journey. So the need is there, and it's actually it's not new for other countries. The other countries who have palliative care already integrated into their healthcare system.
You've mentioned that this particular organization is a voluntary one. How open or how receptive have we all been in terms of either joining or participating in providing palliative care?
We find that when people get the information, they actually make informed decisions and join us. And we must say that to join us, you don't need to be a chaplain, you don't need to be a nurse, you don't need to be a doctor. Frederico, he spoke about the holistic approach. I mean, if you're a social worker, you can come help us. That's a part of the team, okay? We've had persons who have been bankers, we have teachers, we need lawyers, okay? At this point right now, we need an auditor.
We have, yes, we need, we need at least two very practical practical aspects. So we reach patients in a car. We go to patients' home. We bring the equipment. We bring sometimes then from home to the hospital to get their meds. So unfortunately, the only car the institution has, it broke down a week ago. So there's a very specific and practical need we are facing right now as an institution. Have a vehicle to continue reaching patients home. We have been kind of palliating ourselves with the generosity of my community, the Jesuit fathers. They let us use a car for now, but it's something has to be addressed.
Yeah.
And it's volunteer based, but we're actually making great strides in that we are in the process of getting a doctor that is dedicated to palliative care, and that has come on board with the help of, well, MOH and NHI.
Yeah.
So we are making strides, but we want to appeal to persons out there. If you've encountered this in your life, if you've had an experience whereby a loved one was at home, okay, and received care from the organization or from anyone else, or didn't receive care and you would like for someone not to suffer like that without any assistance, come join us and we'll help you. We'll show you how.
So if someone is listening and saying, that sounds interesting, maybe I'll attempt to do that. What can you explain to them would be required of them as a volunteer?
The first thing I will say, do not be afraid. Please do not be afraid. It's nothing to fear about death. We all will die. When?
No one knows.
Or how? So we don't have control on that, but we have control on what? And how we die, where we die, is surrounded by hood. That will be dignity to our dead. So nobody should die alone. Nobody should die in suffering. It is resource and many levels, in the social level, in the medical level, in the spiritual level, to have a dignified death. I would say, please do not be afraid. It's also, some of us are specialized in the field, but it's also a training for everybody. We are.
So you prepare them.
We have been talking to prepare. Nobody's get thrown to the fire. No, the idea is to prepare. But what we need, what would be the first requirement? A compassionate, open heart. You know, my neighbor, my sister, my brother, my fellow Belizean citizen is suffering. How I can help? How I can give something from me? How I can give some little of my time? At least 2 hours a day, a week, and go and be with that person, smiling, talking about whatever the person wants to talk, or bringing something I have. You say something this morning, and I was listening. You said we should look at the full, at the cup, at the full part. And I've been telling my sister, my brother, and all the volunteers at the institution is listen to their work, listen to their story. I've been here for 3 weeks only. This cup is very full. Years ago, before Dr. Thompson started this project, people were dying without any assistance. Especially those who do not have resource. We are here not talking about people who has resource to go and buy the meds. The majority of people, they do not have. And if it is not this service reaching them, they may have a very painful death because they don't have the resource to get what they need to have a dignified death.
Another point is that while we're talking mostly for hospice and palliative care, it involves death and dying. It's important to note that you can volunteer without being a patient care provider. Okay, there's an office. You can manage stuff in the office. Do the storeroom inventory. You can pick up food for patients and drop it off. Okay, you can carry their medications to them. Okay, you can help us to repair equipment. You can do, there are many other things you can do if you're not comfortable with direct patient contact.
Yeah, that's it.
We have about 25 junior college, who are interested and eager to not just to go and do volunteer work, but to do the experience of first hands with the patient. And I think sometimes we assume young people, or you know, this is not for young people. This is for all age. And the other thing is, if we want to change this culture, you know, 100 years ago, talk about death was not so scary as it is today. And that means is we have developed all this culture on death. And we, you know, I say, if I have white hair, it doesn't mean I'm getting wise. It means I'm getting old. So that means is I'm aging and I will die. So how to neutralize and live that with peace? Assume it's part of life and enjoy life. Two things I would like before we, when we talk about palliative care, when we talk about hospice, we talk about quality of life. Is not to go home and cross arms and wait until death comes. It's to fully continue enjoying life. All of this support is to continue working, continue doing what you like to do if your body allows you to do.
What do you find to be a common request from the patients you work with?
It depends.
Yeah.
It's going to depend. Many of the patients, it's symptom, from my part, it's symptom relief. Most of them come ailing with pain, so it's mostly pain management.
Okay.
Others, depending on the condition, could be requiring help in terms of oxygen. Well, it's mostly symptomatic relief, and that's where we want what we want for them. As I mentioned to them, we may not offer a cure right now, but if you need oxygen, we give it. If you have pain, we make sure you're without pain. If you require transfusion, we get you blood. What we want you is to be as active, as Frederico mentioned, as active as can possibly be. So for my one is more on the...
Yeah, they see you as a doctor.
One of our most common requests, I mean, one of our biggest expenses actually is adult Pampers. It's as basic as that. That's what the bulk of the money goes on. And it's important to realize that while we take care of patients at different times during the disease process, so it does not necessarily mean that you're on the bed and you're dying and you have 5 more days to live, right? So this can be ongoing from the time you're diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Now, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in supporting the organization in any way?
Okay, I'm the one with the number. Right? All right, our phone number 631-2244. And we have a Facebook page that we recently revamped. We can get one of the young technical persons can actually join us and be responsible for the Facebook page.
Okay.
Right? So Belize Hospice Palliative Care Foundation.
Well, thank you. So anything else you'd like to share with the public about why they should consider volunteering?
Palliative care is intended to change culture. And palliative care is intended to develop in a city. So it's like Marilyn was saying in the beginning, to get involved. It's a culture, it's a neighbor to neighbor. Sometimes you don't have to, sometimes, the majority of times, you don't have to be a blood relative. You don't have even to be a friend. You can be a neighbor who just, we know less or more what is going on. Just go knock the door and say, how I can be a help.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in and telling us about the great work that you do.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to St. Martin's Credit Union about the upcoming Credit Union Days.